My sister ran from her own wedding and the bride who took her place didn't smell right, but a part of me was thrilled. My name is Marcus Donovan. Yeah, I know. Not exactly a name that screams main character. Right now, I'm not some hero with a grand destiny. I'm just a regular guy about to get married with a mother of all headaches. Figuring out which of the identical twins is actually my fiancée. That's right, twins. My fiancée, the one in the contract, is Isabelle Reed. She's gentle, sweet, the human equivalent of a calm lake. Her sister, my future sister-in-law, is Natalie Reed. She's a live wire. All sharp edges and playful sparks. 3 days before the wedding, I knew something was wrong. The Isabelle helping me try on my tux wasn't wearing the familiar gardenia scent we both loved. It was replaced by a cloying sweet rose. She'd forgotten the little inside jokes that only the two of us shared, and she flashed me a sly, knowing smile that I'd only ever seen on Natalie. A crazy thought started growing in my mind, taking root like a weed. Had my fiancée been swapped out? 3 days before the wedding, I was at the tux shop getting fitted. The guy in the mirror looks sharp. Clean up nice. So, what's the verdict? I turned around asking my fiancée Isabelle, who was lounging on a plush sofa. She had one leg crossed over the other, chin propped on her hand as she sized me up. Her eyes were sparkling, but not in the usual way. There was a critical, almost playful edge to her gaze, a far cry from the soft, adoring looks Isabelle usually gave me. Not bad, she said, standing and walking toward me. But your tie's crooked. She leaned in close, and a strange perfume hit me. It wasn't the light, elegant gardenia Isabelle always wore. This scent was sweeter, more aggressive, like a blooming red rose. I felt my brow furrow just slightly. Her slender fingers deftly straightened my tie, but when her fingertips brushed against my throat, my body went rigid. It was a light, almost teasing touch. She didn't seem to notice my reaction. She stepped back, clapped her hands together, and grinned. There, perfect. My fiancé is one handsome man. The compliment coming from her sounded more like a playful jab. When Isabelle complimented me, she'd usually blush and murmur something like, "You look really nice in that." I pushed the weird feeling down. Maybe it was just pre-wedding jitters for both of us. A woman changing her perfume isn't a federal crime. As long as you like it, I said, shrugging off the jacket and handing it to the attendant. Hey, she said, suddenly leaning close to my ear, her warm breath tickling my neck. Tonight. Feel like celebrating a little early. My heart hammered against my ribs. This was not Isabelle. Isabelle was shy. The most intimate we'd ever been was a series of gentle, tentative kisses. She would never ever say something with such a blatant invitation. That tone, that playful cadence. I'd only ever heard it from one person, her sister Natalie. I whipped my head around to look at her. She was batting her eyelashes at me. The corners of her eyes crinkled in a triumphant smirk. The face was Isabelle's, but the soul behind the eyes was someone else entirely. What? Why are you looking at me like that? She asked, feigning innocence as she looped her arm through mine. Come on, let's get some food. I'm starving. My mind was a complete mess as she dragged me out of the store. Had I lost my mind, or had the world gone insane? In the car, she buckled her seatbelt like a pro and turned on the stereo, blasting some loud driving indie rock. Isabelle only ever listened to quiet classical music. You changed your perfume, I said, starting the car, trying to sound casual. She was bobbing her head to the music. She paused, glanced at me, and smiled. Just wanted a change of pace. Don't you get tired of the same old thing? Not really, I said. Honestly, I really liked your old one. She just shrugged and turned to look out the window. On the drive, I watched her. She tapped her fingers on the window pane in time with the drums. She'd snort with laughter at a funny billboard, and she sang along to the music completely off-key and without a care in the world. These were not things Isabelle would do. Isabelle was quiet, composed, always wearing a perfectly measured smile. My stomach sank. For dinner, I deliberately chose a high-end sushi place that Isabelle hated. She couldn't stand the thought of raw fish. Sure enough, the moment she saw the menu, her perfect eyebrows knitted together. "Why'd we come here?" she asked, her tone dripping with annoyance. "You said you wanted to try something different, right?" I said, looking her straight in the eye. She froze for a second before a smile bloomed on her face. "Oh, right. Good point. A little change now and then is a good thing." She picked up the menu and proceeded to order a mountain of cooked food, tempura, grilled eel, without touching a single piece of sashimi. During the meal, I told her a stupid joke about something that happened in my office. It was a dumb story, but it always made Isabelle laugh until she cried. When I finished, she just gave a weak polite smile, her eyes wandering. She clearly hadn't gotten the punchline. "Not funny?" I asked. "What?" "Oh, yeah. Hilarious," she said, nodding vaguely. The air grew thick with tension. I was now 99% sure. This woman sitting across from me was not my fiancée. It was Natalie. But why? What were they playing at? And where was Isabelle? After dinner, she wanted to go see a movie, but I shut her down. "I'm tired. I think I'm just going to head home," I said, my voice colder than I intended. She seemed to pick up on my mood and didn't push it, sitting silently in the passenger seat for the entire ride. I pulled up in front of her apartment building. "Well, I'm heading up," she said, unbuckling her seat belt, but making no move to leave. "Okay," I replied, staring straight ahead through the windshield. The silence in the car was deafening, broken only by the quiet hum of the AC. "Marcus," she said suddenly. "Are you mad at me?" "Nope." "Yes, you are," she said, her voice sounding a little hurt. "You've been weird ever since we left the tux shop. Did I do something wrong?" I turned and looked at her in the dim light of the dashboard. Her face was identical to Isabelle's, but the emotions swimming in her eyes were far more complex. There was apprehension, anxiety, and something else I couldn't quite decipher. "What do you think?" I asked, turning the question back on her. She bit her lip and said nothing. After a few tense seconds, she suddenly leaned over and planted a quick soft kiss on my cheek. The touch was gone as quickly as it came. I froze. "Good night," she whispered, then scrambled out of the car and ran toward her building like a startled deer. I sat there for a long time, my hand on the spot she kissed. A faint warmth lingered along with that unfamiliar scent of roses. My head was spinning even faster now. What the hell was Natalie up to? The next morning, I got a call from Isabelle. "Marcus, are you free today? I was hoping you could go somewhere with me," she chirped, her voice full of energy. A stubborn knot of anger and curiosity tightened in my gut. I had to see how far she would take this. "Where to?" "An art exhibit. A friend gave me tickets and today's the last day." I agreed. I knew for a fact that Isabelle had zero interest in art. She was a homebody who loved reading and gardening. Natalie, on the other hand, had been an art major in college. She wasn't even trying to hide it anymore. When I picked her up, she was wearing a bright yellow sundress with her hair in a high ponytail, looking vibrant and full of life. Isabelle's closet was a sea of beige, white, and pastel blue. "What do you think?" she asked, twirling in front of me. "It's nice," I said, my tone cold. "Keep acting. Let's see your next move." At the art museum, she was like a fish back in water. She dragged me from one painting to the next, excitedly explaining different movements and techniques that went completely over my head. Her eyes were shining. I was barely listening, just offering vague murmurs of agreement. We stopped in front of an impressionist landscape, and she seemed completely captivated. "The way the artist handled the light here is just incredible. Look at this." She pointed to a bright patch on the canvas and turned to share her excitement with me, only to find me staring intently at her hand. The back of her left hand was perfectly smooth, but Isabelle's left hand near her wrist had a faint silvery scar. We were kids climbing a tree in her backyard. She'd slipped, and when I reached for her, a branch had scraped her arm. The scar was barely visible unless you were looking for it, but it was there. It was one of our little secrets. I remember joking once, "Even if you two try to pull a fast one on me, I'll always be able to tell which is you because of this scar." Isabelle had blushed and playfully punched my arm. Now the scar was gone. "What is it?" "Is there something on my hand?" she asked, noticing my stare and pulling her hand back. Nothing, I said, my gaze shifting away as the last piece of the puzzle clicked into place. Where's your scar? I thought you had one right here. I pointed to the spot on her wrist. My voice was level, but my words dropped into the conversation like a stone in a quiet pond. Her entire expression changed for a split second. Her face was a cocktail of panic and guilt before she masked it with a brittle smile. It was a tiny crack in her facade, but I saw it. Oh, that, she said, lifting her wrist and pretending to examine it. Her smile was strained. A friend recommended this amazing scar removal cream. It works wonders. See, it's almost completely faded. The excuse was pathetic. She'd had that scar for 20 years. What cream could make it vanish in 3 days? I didn't call her out. I just nodded. Wow, it really works. She let out a breath she'd clearly been holding. For the rest of the time at the museum, she was distracted and quiet. By the time we left, it was getting dark. I'll take you home, I said. Okay, she mumbled, her mood low. Back in front of her building, we were plunged into the same awkward silence as the night before. Marcus, she finally said, her voice muffled. Do you think I'm being weird? A little, I admitted, not bothering to lie this time. She trailed off, fidgeting with her hands. I just thought since we're getting married, I wanted to show you a different side of me. Be more fun, more spontaneous. You don't like it? She looked up, her eyes glistening and vulnerable. If I didn't know the truth, I might have actually fallen for it. Now I just felt ridiculous. It's not that I don't like it, I said. It's just different. Well, you'll get used to it, she said quickly, a hint of desperation in her voice. I looked at her and a wave of exhaustion washed over me. I was done playing this game. Natalie, I said, her name cutting through the air. Her body jolted as if she'd been struck by lightning. Her eyes widened in disbelief. What? What did you call me? She stammered, her voice trembling. I said Natalie, I repeated, locking my eyes on hers. The show's over. It wasn't fun. The air in the car turned to ice. The color drained from her face, leaving it a ghostly white. Her lips trembled, but no words came out. All the practiced composure of her sister was gone, replaced by pure, unadulterated panic. How? How did you know? She finally whispered, her voice raw. You left a trail of breadcrumbs a mile wide, I said, leaning back against the seat, feeling utterly drained. The perfume, the music, the food, and the scar on your hand, or rather the lack of one. With every clue I listed, her face grew paler. Finally, she bowed her head, her long eyelashes hiding her expression. So, are you going to tell me what's going on? I asked. Where's Isabelle? She didn't answer, but her shoulders started to shake. She was crying. A surge of irritation went through me. I can't stand it when women cry, especially not when the woman crying is wearing my fiancé's face. Talk to me, I said, my voice harsher than I intended. She flinched and looked up. Her face streaked with tears. I can't tell you, she choked out. Marcus, please don't ask. I'm begging you. You can't tell me. I let out a bitter laugh. You two treat me like an idiot. And now you think you could just brush it off. Natalie, let me make this clear. I'm supposed to be marrying Isabelle, not you. If you don't start talking, I'm going straight upstairs to have a chat with your parents. I moved to open the car door. No. She lunged across the console and grabbed my arm, her grip surprisingly strong. Don't go up there, please. She sobbed, completely breathless. My sister, she has her reasons. If you go up there, you'll ruin everything. What reasons? I shot back, pulling my arm away. What could possibly be more important than our wedding? She opened her mouth, but only more tears came out. I really can't say. Marcus, just trust me. Trust my sister. We would never hurt you. Just give us 2 more days. That's all. After the wedding, everything will go back to normal. Isabelle will come back. After the wedding? I asked, incredulous. Are you suggesting that I'm supposed to marry you? She froze, the tears stopping midstream. It was as if that possibility had never even occurred to her. "No, that's not, I mean," she stammered, waving her hands frantically. "What I mean is, could you just play along for 2 more days as a favor to me? To my sister, please." I looked at her tear-streaked face and desperate red-rimmed eyes. My head was a war zone. Logic screamed at me to get out of the car, blow this whole thing wide open, and demand answers. But my heart, looking at that face, hearing that plea, I hesitated. She said Isabelle had her reasons. What if there was something seriously wrong that I didn't know about? "Marcus," she whispered, seeing my hesitation and leaning closer. Her voice was soft. "I'm begging you. If you help us, I swear when this is all over, I'll do anything for you. I'll be your personal slave for life." She was so close now. The scent of roses mixed with the warm, humid scent of her tears filled the small space. My heart, against all reason, skipped a beat. In the end, I couldn't do it. I couldn't bring myself to be the bad guy. "This one time," I said, my voice low and serious as I looked her in the eye. "And that's it. 2 days from now, before the ceremony, I need to see Isabelle. If I don't, or if you can't give me a damn good explanation, all bets are off." Natalie's eyes lit up like a city skyline at night. "Thank you, Marcus. You're the best." She looked like she was about to hug me, but she stopped herself, awkwardly pulling her hands back. "Don't start with that," I grumbled. "And don't forget what you promised. Personal slave for life." A watery smile broke through her tears, and she nodded vigorously. For the next 2 days, I was her reluctant accomplice. We had to keep up the act, especially in front of our parents. The next evening, both families met for dinner to finalize the last-minute wedding details. Natalie was brilliant. She channeled Isabelle perfectly, speaking in soft tones, putting food on my plate, and maintaining a constant, pleasant smile. My parents were completely charmed, telling me over and over again how lucky I was to have such a thoughtful fiancé. I felt like I was walking on eggshells the entire time. The food tasting like cardboard in my mouth. I was the only one at the table who knew that every smile, every gesture was a lie. Halfway through dinner, my phone rang. An urgent call from work. I stepped outside to take it. When I came back, I paused at the door to the private room, hearing my mom's voice inside. "Isabelle, sweetie, I love your phone case. Where did you get it?" My stomach dropped. Isabelle's phone case was a simple plain seafoam green. Natalie's was a ridiculously flashy cartoon rabbit with 3D ears. How could she have missed that? I pushed the door open just in time to see Natalie pulling her phone out of her purse. "Oh, you like it, Mrs. Donovan," she said smoothly. "It's actually my sister's. I was in such a rush today, I grabbed the wrong phone." Quick on her feet. "I'll give her that. My mom bought it completely." "Oh, I was wondering. It didn't seem like your usual style. Your sister has such a bubbly personality." Natalie just smiled and nodded. I sat back down, my eyes fixed on the rabbit phone case she placed on the table. It was definitely Natalie's. But then a low buzzing sound came from inside her purse. It wasn't loud, but everyone heard it. Natalie froze. A deer in the headlights. Every pair of eyes at the table zeroed in on her small handbag. "Huh? You said you grabbed the wrong phone. Is there another one ringing in your bag?" My mom asked, her curiosity piqued. A thin sheen of sweat broke out on Natalie's forehead. She clasped her hands together, her mouth opening and closing, but no sound came out. The buzzing continued, insistent. I knew exactly what was happening. The rabbit phone was hers. The one in the bag belonged to my actual fiancée, Isabelle. She was carrying both. Maybe I was mistaken. "I guess I brought both," Natalie managed to say, her voice thin and unconvincing. The atmosphere turned awkward. I looked at her completely flustered and sighed internally. I picked up the serving chopsticks, placed a piece of fish in her bowl, and said casually, "You're such a dit sometimes. Remember that time on vacation you kept trying to swipe our hotel key card to get into the house?" I shot her a look, trying to will her to play along. Natalie blinked, then her eyes widened in understanding. She gave me a grateful glance and ran with it. Oh my God. Yes. My memory is getting so bad. I'm so sorry, everyone. How embarrassing. And just like that, with me running interference, the moment of crisis passed. Our parents laughed it off as a cute ditzy moment and moved on. But I could see that Natalie's back was soaked with sweat. On the drive home, she was silent. Thanks for that. Back there, she said quietly as we neared her place. Just try to be smarter next time, I said flatly. You won't always have someone to cover for you. She mumbled a quiet, okay. When the car stopped, she didn't get out. Marcus, she began, hesitating. Do you think I'm an idiot? Pretty much, yeah, I said without sugar-coating it. Her head sank even lower. I don't mean to be, she said, her voice thick with emotion. But when I get nervous, my mind just goes blank. My sister is always so calm and collected. I try to be like her, but I just can't. Then don't, I said. Why not just be yourself? She looked up at me, shocked, as if that thought had never occurred to her. But if I act like myself, everyone will know. Then think of a better story, I said, staring ahead. Tell them you wanted to try out a new personality before the wedding, so you and your sister swapped styles for a few days. It's better than leaving a trail of obvious clues. She just stared at me, speechless. Whatever. Forget it, I said, getting impatient. Just get upstairs. We have a ton of stuff to do tomorrow. She mumbled an okay and slowly unbuckled her seat belt. Hey, she said, pausing with her hand on the door handle. What now? Tomorrow we have an engagement photo shoot, right? She asked in a small voice. Yeah. So? At the photo shoot, will there be, close-up shots, she asked, her voice barely a whisper, her cheeks glowing in the dim light. Something twisted in my gut. I decided to tease her. What do you think? We're taking engagement photos, not passport photos. Her face turned a shade of crimson I didn't think was possible. Oh, okay. Got it, she stammered, then bolted from the car. I watched her disappear into the building, an involuntary smile spreading across my face. This imposter. Maybe she wasn't so bad after all. The photo shoot was at a historic estate out in the suburbs. The kind of place with sprawling lawns and ivy-covered walls. When Natalie, or rather my publicly recognized fiancée Isabelle, stepped out of the dressing room in a white wedding gown, everyone went quiet for a second. She was beautiful, genuinely stunning. The dress was one Isabelle had picked out. Elegant, classic, and perfectly tailored. But on Natalie, it had a completely different energy. On Isabelle, it would have looked graceful like a swan. On Natalie, it looked like a mischievous fairy had crashed a royal ball, ethereal and dazzling. She wobbled on the high heels, clearly uncomfortable. The long train of the dress tripping her up. Careful, I said, instinctively stepping forward to steady her. My hand on her arm, I could feel how tense she was. Thanks, she whispered, her cheeks flushing. The photographer was a high-energy guy who immediately started ordering us into different poses. It started off simple enough, standing side by side, me hugging her from behind. With every point of contact, I could feel Natalie's nervousness. Her body was a coiled spring, her breathing shallow. I wasn't much better. Her unique rose scent was messing with my head, making my heartbeat way too fast. Okay, bride and groom, get closer. A little more intimacy, people. The photographer yelled from behind his camera. You're about to get married, not meeting for a blind date. The crew chuckled. Natalie's face was as red as a tomato. All right, groom. Kiss your bride, the photographer commanded. My heart skipped a beat. Natalie's eyes shot wide open, a look of pure panic on her face as she stared at me. Don't look at him. Look at the camera, the photographer shouted. I looked at Natalie, her eyes screaming, no. Her long eyelashes fluttered like a trapped butterfly's wings. I knew I couldn't do it. I couldn't kiss her. It would be a betrayal of Isabelle, and it wouldn't be fair to Natalie. Hey, photographer, I said, clearing my throat. We're a little traditional. We were kind of hoping to save that moment for the actual wedding day. Could we maybe try a different pose? The excuse sounded lame, even to my own ears. The photographer paused. Then a knowing smile spread across his face. Hey, I get it. Respect. Okay, new plan. Groom, you lift the bride up. That's allowed, right? No rules against that. Lift her up. I glanced at Natalie. She was looking at me, her expression pleading, but we were out of options. I gave her a subtle nod, trying to tell her it would be okay. Then I bent down, slid one arm under her knees and the other around her back, and lifted her into my arms. She was so much lighter than I'd expected. She let out a little gasp and instinctively wrapped her arms around my neck. Suddenly, her face was inches from mine. I could see the fine soft hairs on her cheeks. Her lips parted slightly in surprise. That scent of roses was everywhere, overwhelming me. My heart was completely out of control. Smile. Yes, just like that. Bride, look at the groom. Give me some sweet, loving eyes. The photographer directed excitedly. Natalie stiffly turned her head and her gaze met mine. Time seemed to stop. Her eyes were so bright, like pools of clear water, and in them I could see my own flustered reflection. Neither of us spoke. We forgot to smile. Click, click. The photographer loved it. He couldn't stop snapping photos. Perfect. That's the mood. Hold that right there. I held her. She held on to me, and under the watchful eyes of a dozen strangers, we stayed locked in that intimate, agonizing pose. I could feel the slight tremor in the arms wrapped around my neck. I don't know how long we stood there before the photographer finally yelled, "Cut." I gently set her back on her feet. The moment her heels touched the ground, she stumbled. I quickly reached out to catch her. "You okay?" I asked. She just shook her head, staring at the ground, the tips of her ears bright red. "Okay, let's take a break and get into the next outfits," a crew member announced. Natalie practically fled to the dressing room. I stood there looking down at my hands. My palms still felt warm from her body. A strange, unidentifiable feeling was churning inside me. It was confusing and annoying, and there was a flutter of something else, something I didn't want to admit was excitement. I ran a hand through my hair, frustrated. "Get a grip, Donovan," I told myself. "That's your future sister-in-law you were just holding. The woman you're supposed to marry is Isabelle." For the rest of the shoot, I made a point of keeping my distance from Natalie, unless the photographer specifically told me to touch her. I didn't. Natalie seemed to notice. She was quiet and cooperative, but the light in her eyes had dimmed. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the shoot was over. The car ride back to the city was as usual silent. "Marcus," she said suddenly. "Yeah. I'm sorry." "For what?" I asked, confused. "For today, for being a pain," she said. I was so nervous. I probably ruined everything. "It's fine," I said. "They're just pictures. No one will be able to tell." She mumbled an "oh," and fell silent again. The tension in the car was even thicker than before. I turned on the radio, hoping to break the silence. The system randomly landed on a cheesy love song. The lyrics crooned, "The warmth of our first embrace still lingers on my skin." I fumbled with the controls, trying to change the station, but accidentally cranked up the volume instead. "You're the only gamble I'll ever take. A loss I'm willing to make." The singer's voice filled the entire car. I was so embarrassed, my toes were curling inside my shoes. But then Natalie let out a snort of laughter. I glanced in the rearview mirror and saw her shoulders shaking, her eyes curved into little crescent moons. "What's so funny?" I snapped, my embarrassment turning into irritation. "Nothing," she said, trying to stifle her giggles. "It's just the song is kind of perfect for the situation, don't you think?" I shot her a glare and finally managed to turn the music off. The car was quiet again, but the heavy oppressive atmosphere was gone. Something subtle had shifted between us. I knew this was dangerous. It felt like walking a tightrope, but my heart, completely against my will, was starting to lean toward the edge. The day after the photo shoot was the last day before the wedding. My patience was gone. First thing in the morning, I called Natalie. Today, I see Isabelle. No more excuses, I said. My tone leaving no room for argument. The line was silent for a few seconds before she answered, her voice tired. I know. 3 o'clock this afternoon, the Daily Grind coffee shop on the West Loop. My sister will be there. This isn't another one of your games, is it? I warned. No, she said and hung up. I spent the entire morning pacing, my mind racing through 100 different scenarios. How would Isabelle explain herself? What kind of trouble was she in? How was I supposed to act? I couldn't take it anymore. At 2:30, I was in my car speeding toward the coffee shop. The Daily Grind was tucked away on a quiet side street with a cozy vintage vibe. It was mostly empty when I arrived. I saw her immediately, sitting at a table by the window. It was Isabelle. She was wearing a cream-colored trench coat, her long hair falling over her shoulders. She sat quietly gazing out the window, her profile soft and familiar. It was her, the same gentle, serene woman I knew. A weight I didn't know I was carrying lifted from my shoulders. I took a deep breath and walked over. Isabelle, I said, sitting down across from her. She turned, a faint apologetic smile on her face. Her eyes were filled with a mixture of guilt and anxiety. Marcus, you're here. I'm here, I said, my voice flat. So, are you going to tell me what the hell is going on? She stirred her coffee, avoiding my gaze. I'm sorry, she said after a long pause. This is all my fault. I shouldn't have asked Natalie to do that, and I definitely shouldn't have hidden it from you. I don't want to hear I'm sorry, I cut her off. I want to know why. Isabelle paled. She bit her lip as if wrestling with a difficult decision. I have pre-wedding jitters, she finally said, looking up at me, her eyes welling with tears. A few days ago, I started to panic. I got so scared of marriage, of the future, of not being a good wife. I couldn't sleep. And just the thought of the wedding made my heart pound. Cold feet. I frowned. I considered it, but it felt too cliché. I know it sounds crazy, she said with a humorless laugh. But I couldn't control it. I was a mess and I couldn't face you. I couldn't face the wedding. I was afraid you'd be disappointed or worried if you saw me like that. So, you had Natalie pretend to be you. I still couldn't wrap my head around it. Do you have any idea how insane that is? I know. A tear rolled down her cheek. It was Natalie's idea. She said she could cover for me for a few days. Give me some space to clear my head and pull myself together. She thought I'd snap out of it. My head was so messed up. I agreed. Her explanation was plausible. Every detail sounded like it could be true, but deep down something still felt off. And now, are you pulled together? I asked. Much better, she said, nodding, a real smile finally appearing. Being alone these past few days gave me time to think. And I realized marriage isn't a cage. As long as I have you, I have nothing to be afraid of. Marcus, I was wrong. I should never have doubted what we have. Can you forgive me? She reached across the table and placed her hand on mine. Her eyes were sincere, full of hope. Her palm was warm, the touch familiar. Seeing her so fragile and tearful, my resolve began to crumble. Maybe I was overthinking it. Maybe she was just a woman who had been overwhelmed by the pressure of it all. Someone who needed my understanding. Okay, stop crying, I said, turning my hand over to squeeze hers. I'm not mad. I'm just glad you're okay. She broke into a relieved, teary smile and nodded. So, tomorrow? The wedding's still on, right? She asked cautiously. Of course. We talked for a while longer, mostly about last-minute wedding details. She seemed completely back to her old self, gentle, considerate, always putting me first. This was the Isabelle I knew. But for some reason, sitting there with her, I felt a strange sense of unease. The tension, the banter, the weirdly electrifying moments I'd had with Natalie, they were all gone. Everything was back on track, just like it was supposed to be. I should have been happy. Instead, I just felt hollow. After I left Isabelle, I was driving home when my phone rang. It was Natalie. "So, did you see my sister?" she asked, her voice tight with nerves. "I saw her." Did she explain everything?" "She did." "Pre-wedding jitters," I said, my tone neutral. The line went quiet. "You don't believe her, do you?" Natalie asked after a moment. I didn't answer, which was an answer in itself. "Marcus," Natalie said, her voice dropping to a serious whisper. "What my sister told you is the truth. You have to believe her." "Is that so?" I let out a cold laugh. "Then maybe you can explain to me how Isabelle's scar managed to disappear and reappear because of pre-wedding jitters." That was it. That was the detail that wouldn't let go. Just now when I held Isabelle's hand, I had seen it clearly. The faint silvery scar was right back where it belonged. No scar cream in the world could explain that. The other end of the line was dead silent. I was about to hang up when I heard her voice, thick with tears. "Marcus, I'm begging you. Stop asking questions. Just know that my sister loves you more than anything. She has her reasons for doing all of this. This wedding, it has to happen. Please just help us one more time. This is the last time. Tomorrow, all you have to do is get through the ceremony with my sister. Once it's over, I promise everything will make sense." Her voice was raw with desperation. My resolve wavered again. What the hell were these two sisters hiding? What was the secret behind their charade? The cold feet story was full of holes. The disappearing and reappearing scar was an unsolvable riddle. But Natalie's plea sounded so real. I felt like I was caught in a whirlpool. Ahead of me was a wedding built on lies. Behind me was the risk of hurting someone I loved. What was I supposed to do? I hung up, pulled the car over, and lit a cigarette. In the swirling smoke, Isabelle's and Natalie's faces flickered in my mind. One was gentle as water, the other bright as fire. They were both lying, but their eyes held real emotions. Isabelle's love, Natalie's fear. I crushed the cigarette under my heel, frustrated. It was too late to back out now. The wedding was tomorrow. The invitations were sent. The guests were all notified. Canceling now would be a massive scandal for both families, inviting endless speculation. Whatever their secret was, it seemed I would have to wait until after the wedding to find out. I started the car and dialed Natalie's number. "I'll do it," I said without preamble. "Really?" She breathed, her voice filled with disbelief and relief. "But this is the last time," my voice was ice. "The second that ceremony is over. You two owe me the truth. If you don't give it to me, I'm done playing games." "Okay, you have my word," she agreed instantly, as if afraid I'd change my mind. We had a deal. A dangerous, fragile, and utterly insane deal. On the morning of the wedding, my groomsmen dragged me out of bed before the sun was even up. Dressed in my tux, I stared at my reflection. The man in the mirror was about to get married, but my gut was twisted in knots. This whole wedding felt like a meticulously staged play, and I was the only one in the audience who knew the lead actress had an understudy. On the way to pick up the bride, my mind was a chaotic mess. Who would I see when that door opened, the gentle Isabelle or Natalie in her place? The convoy of cars pulled up to the Reed's house. My groomsmen, laughing and rowdy, tried to storm the door, only to be met by a barricade of bridesmaids demanding playful tributes before they would let us pass. I finally squeezed through and my eyes immediately found her sitting on the edge of the bed in a traditional white wedding dress. A delicate lace veil covered her face. But the way she sat, poised, quiet, perfectly composed, it had to be Isabelle. Natalie in a mint green bridesmaid dress was part of the group blocking the door, laughing as she issued challenges. Her eyes met mine for a fraction of a second before she quickly looked away. A faint blush on her cheeks. After a series of ridiculous tasks, I finally made it to my bride. "I'm here to get you," I said, kneeling on one knee and offering her the bouquet. She took the flowers shyly and with Natalie's help, stood up. She didn't say a word the entire time. I carried her on my back down the stairs, a tradition her family insisted on, and I could feel the slight tremble in her body as she clung to me. She felt a little heavier than Natalie did at the photo shoot. In the limo, she sat beside me, still silent. I looked at her and a wild thought crossed my mind. Tired? I asked, testing the waters. She shook her head gently. Did you sleep well last night? I tried again. She nodded. Still no words. That feeling of wrongness came crashing back. Isabelle was quiet, but she wasn't mute. She would have at least said something in response to my questions. We arrived at the hotel where the ceremony was being held. As I helped her out of the car, my fingers brushed against her wrist. It was smooth. There was no scar. My heart plummeted into my stomach. It's Natalie. The bride sitting on the bed was Natalie. And the bridesmaid helping her, laughing with me just minutes ago, was the real Isabelle. They'd switched again at the last minute. I snapped my head up, searching the crowd for the bridesmaid. She was looking right at me, her eyes filled with apology and a desperate plea. I almost lost it right there. What the hell were they doing? Were they just toying with me? I took a deep shaky breath, forcing the rage down. I couldn't blow up now. Not here. Not with all our guests watching. I couldn't humiliate both of our families. I took the arm of my bride, Natalie, and led her into the bridal suite. I closed the door, shutting out the rest of the world. It was just the two of us. She sat down, her veil still hiding her face. Are you having fun? I asked, my voice dangerously quiet. Her body flinched. Natalie, I'm asking you again. Is this fun for you? I walked toward her, towering over her. Slowly, her hands came up and lifted the veil. Her face was exquisite, but pale and drawn. Her eyes were red, as if she'd been crying. I'm sorry, she whispered, her voice breaking. I don't want to hear that again, I hissed. What is this? Why did you switch back? The woman at the coffee shop yesterday. That was you, wasn't it? Not Isabelle. It finally clicked. The disappearing scar wasn't a mistake. It was their tell. It was how they marked who was playing the part. The person who had fed me the story about pre-wedding jitters, who had begged for my forgiveness. It wasn't Isabelle. It was Natalie. No wonder it felt so wrong. No wonder I hadn't felt that familiar connection. They had been lying to me from the very beginning. Natalie was shaken by my anger and fresh tears welled in her eyes. No, that was my sister yesterday, she insisted weakly. Enough. I grabbed her wrist, holding her smooth, scarless hand up for her to see. Then tell me, where's your sister's scar? Did that miracle cream work overnight? She stared at her own hand, speechless as tears streamed down her face. Why? My chest felt tight, a mix of anger and pain. Why would you do this to me? I'm supposed to be your brother-in-law. Don't you trust me at all? Whatever is going on, why couldn't you just tell me? It's not that. We do trust you, she cried, trying to pull her hand away, but I held on tighter. Then what is it? I can't say. I really can't say. She was sobbing now, on the verge of a complete breakdown. Marcus, don't make me do this, please. Just get through the ceremony with me. After that, it will all be over. Get through the ceremony with you. I laughed, a bitter hollow sound. Natalie, are you insane? I'm supposed to marry your sister. I know, she cried out. But my sister, she can't marry you. Her words hit me like a physical blow. What do you mean? I whispered, stunned. She looked at me, her face a mess of tears, her eyes filled with a desperate, heartbreaking pain. Because, her lips trembled, a massive secret fighting its way out. Just then, there was a knock at the door. Isabelle, it's almost time. We need you for the procession. The wedding planner called from the other side. The voice was like a bucket of cold water dumped over our heads. Natalie started trembling violently, her eyes begging me for something, though I didn't know what. I knew this wasn't the time for answers. I let go of her hand and took a step back, my chest heaving. Put the veil back down, I said, the words forced through my teeth. Her shaking hands lowered the lace over her face. The planner knocked again, more urgently this time. I opened the door and gave him a curt nod. Then I turned back to the figure in white and held out my hand. She hesitated for a second before placing her cold, trembling hand in mine. The wedding march began to play. I walked down the aisle, holding the hand of the wrong bride as our friends and family beamed at us, their faces full of love and congratulations. Every step felt like walking on broken glass. I was a clown in a circus of my own making. The officiant's words were a meaningless drone in my ears. All I could hear was Natalie's voice echoing in my head. My sister, she can't marry you. Why? Why the hell not? When it was time to exchange rings, I took the one I'd had custom made for Isabelle and slid it onto Natalie's finger. It fit perfectly. Of course it did. They were twins. Then the officiant announced, "You may now kiss the bride." I stood there staring at the veiled figure before me. This was it. The moment of truth. Behind that lace was Natalie, not Isabelle. If I lifted that veil and kissed her, I would be betraying everything I thought I knew about love and loyalty. But if I didn't, I would expose their secret right here, right now, in front of everyone. Time seemed to slow down. I could hear my own heartbeat thundering in my ears. Natalie was completely still, waiting for my decision. Her hands were clasped in front of her, trembling slightly. I reached up slowly and lifted the veil. Our eyes met. Hers were filled with fear, apology, and something else, something I didn't want to name. The crowd held its breath. I leaned in close, so close that only she could hear me whisper, "I'm doing this for your sister. Not for you." Then I pressed my lips to hers. The kiss was brief, chaste, but the moment our lips touched, something electric shot through me. It wasn't supposed to feel like this. It wasn't supposed to make my heart race and my mind go blank. This was wrong. All wrong. The crowd erupted in applause and cheers. We turned to face them as husband and wife. Mr. and Mrs. Marcus Donovan. Except I'd just married the wrong twin. As we walked back down the aisle together, Natalie's hand in mine, I caught sight of Isabelle in her mint green bridesmaid dress. She was crying, but they weren't tears of joy. They were tears of something else entirely. Guilt? Relief? Sorrow? I couldn't tell. The reception was a blur. We cut the cake. We had our first dance. We posed for countless photos. Through it all, Natalie played her part perfectly. She smiled, she laughed, she fed me cake with shaking hands. But I could see the toll it was taking on her. Her eyes were hollow, her smile strained. Several times I caught her looking around the room frantically, searching for something or someone. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the reception began to wind down. Guests started leaving, offering their congratulations and well wishes. My parents hugged Natalie, telling her how happy they were to have her in the family. Her parents did the same with me. If only they knew. As tradition dictated, we were expected to head to our hotel suite. The bridal suite had been booked months in advance. As we walked toward the elevator, Natalie suddenly stopped. "Marcus," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "What?" "Thank you. For everything." "I know this was, save it," I cut her off. "You and your sister owe me an explanation. Tonight. No more delays." We rode the elevator in silence. The doors opened on the top floor, and we walked to the suite. I swiped the key card and pushed the door open. The room was lavishly decorated with rose petals scattered across the bed, champagne on ice, and soft music playing. It was a romantic setting meant for newlyweds. Instead, it felt like a prison. Natalie walked in slowly, still in her wedding dress. She stood in the middle of the room, looking lost and small. I loosened my tie and poured myself a glass of champagne, downing it in one gulp. "Start talking," I said. "Where's your sister? What the hell is going on?" She turned to face me, and to my surprise, she started unbuttoning the back of her dress. "What are you doing?" I demanded, turning away. "Relax," she said, her voice tired. "I'm not trying to seduce you. I can't breathe in this thing anymore." I heard the rustle of fabric and then she said, "Okay, you can look now." I turned back to find her in a simple white slip, the wedding dress pooled on the floor. She looked younger somehow, more vulnerable. She sat down on the edge of the bed and buried her face in her hands. My sister is sick, she finally said, her voice muffled. What? Isabelle is sick. She has been for months. A heart condition. Something congenital that got worse suddenly. The doctor said she needed surgery, but, her voice broke. But what? But she couldn't have it before the wedding. The recovery time was too long. And if she postponed the wedding, your family would ask questions. There's a clause in the marriage contract. If either party cancels or postpones without legitimate cause, there are financial penalties. Our family's company can't afford that right now. We're on the verge of bankruptcy. I felt like the floor had dropped out from under me. So this whole thing, the switching, the lies, it was because of money? No. Natalie jumped up, her eyes flashing with anger. It was because my sister loves you. She didn't want to burden you with her illness. She didn't want you to marry her out of pity. And she knew that if the wedding was postponed, the contract would be voided. Both our families would be ruined. So what was the plan? I asked, my voice hollow. I would stand in for her at the wedding. Sign the papers. Then after everything was official, she would come back and explain everything. She was going to have the surgery next week. She just needed to get through today. And you agreed to this insanity? She's my sister, Natalie said simply. I would do anything for her. I sank down onto a chair, my head in my hands. This was too much. Too crazy. Too impossible. Where is she now? At the hospital. She's been staying there under a false name. That's where I've been going every night. To take care of her. Everything suddenly made sense. The switches, the lies, the desperate pleas. They weren't playing games with me. They were trying to save each other. I need to see her, I said, standing up. Now. Marcus, it's almost midnight. Visiting hours are, I don't care, I said. I just married you thinking you were her. The least she owes me is a face-to-face conversation. Natalie bit her lip, then nodded. Okay. Let me change. I'll take you to her. 20 minutes later, we were in my car, speeding toward St. Mary's Hospital on the east side of town. Natalie had changed into jeans and a sweater, her hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. She looked more like herself now. More like the vibrant, messy girl I'd spent the last few days with. She's going to kill me for bringing you, Natalie said as we pulled into the parking garage. She should have thought of that before she orchestrated this whole charade, I replied. We took the elevator to the 4th floor, cardiac ward. Natalie led me down a quiet hallway to room 412. She knocked softly before pushing the door open. The room was dimmed, lit only by the glow of medical monitors. And there, in the hospital bed, was Isabelle. The real Isabelle. She looked pale and thin, much more fragile than when I'd seen her at the coffee shop, except that hadn't been her. That had been Natalie. Isabelle's eyes widened when she saw me. Marcus, she breathed. What are you doing here? What am I doing here? I said, my voice rising. What are you doing here? We just got married. Except we didn't. I married your sister because you were too sick, or too proud, or too whatever to tell me the truth. Marcus, please, she said, trying to sit up. An alarm beeped on one of the monitors. Don't, Natalie said quickly, rushing to her side. You need to stay calm. Your heart rate is spiking. I watched as Natalie helped her sister settle back against the pillows, adjusting her foreline with practiced ease. The tenderness between them was obvious. They really would do anything for each other. My anger began to deflate. Why didn't you tell me? I asked, more quietly now. Why all the lies? Isabelle's eyes filled with tears. Because I was scared, she admitted. Scared that if you knew, you wouldn't want me anymore. Scared that you'd marry me out of obligation. Scared that I'd become a burden to you before we even started our life together. That's ridiculous, I said. I love you. Do you? She asked, and there was something in her tone that made me pause. Or do you love the idea of me? The perfect, gentle, uncomplicated woman who never causes problems. I opened my mouth to argue, but the words wouldn't come. Because somewhere in the past few days, something had shifted. The more time I spent with Natalie, her chaos, her humor, her raw honesty, the more I'd felt alive. With Isabelle, everything had always been so measured, so controlled. I spent the last week with Natalie, I said slowly. Thinking she was you. And honestly, there were moments when I forgot she wasn't. Moments when I didn't want to remember. Both sisters stared at me. What are you saying? Isabelle whispered. I'm saying that maybe we both need to be honest here. Did you really ask Natalie to take your place just because of the illness? Or was there another reason? Isabelle looked away, a tear sliding down her cheek. I saw the way you looked at her, she said softly. At our engagement party last year. She was telling some ridiculous story, being her usual chaotic self, and you couldn't stop smiling. You never smiled at me like that. Isabelle, let me finish, she said. I knew then that maybe we weren't right for each other. But the contracts were signed. Our families were so happy. I convinced myself that love would grow. That compatibility mattered more than passion. But then I got sick, she continued. And I realized I didn't want to trap you in a marriage with someone you had to take care of. Someone who could never give you the energy, the adventure, the life that someone like Natalie could. So this was what? I asked. Some kind of test. No, both sisters said at the same time. Natalie stepped forward. It was supposed to be a sacrifice, she said. Isabelle was going to go through with the wedding, have her surgery, and hope for the best. But then she collapsed 3 days before the ceremony. The doctor said she couldn't handle the stress. That's when she asked me to stand in. Just for the wedding day. Just to make it official. And then she would come back, and we'd figure out the rest, Natalie finished. But you felt it too, didn't you? Isabelle asked, looking at me. These past few days with Natalie. You felt something. I couldn't deny it. Yes, I admitted. But that doesn't change the fact that I proposed to you. That I made promises to you. Promises made to the wrong person, Isabelle said with a sad smile. Marcus, I'm releasing you from our engagement. The marriage certificate is in Natalie's name, not mine. Legally, you married her today, not me. What? Both Natalie and I said it simultaneously. I forged the documents, Isabelle admitted. Weeks ago, when I first got sick. I had Natalie's name put on all the official paperwork. I told myself it was just a backup plan, but deep down, I think I knew. I knew that you and Natalie were better suited for each other. Isabelle, you can't just, Natalie started. I can and I did, Isabelle said firmly. Natalie, you've spent your whole life in my shadow. Being the loud one, the messy one, the one who didn't quite fit. But Marcus sees you. Really sees you. And Marcus, she turned to me, you need someone who challenges you, who makes you feel alive. That's not me. That's my sister. The room fell silent except for the steady beep of the heart monitor. I don't know what to say, I finally admitted. Say you'll give it a chance, Isabelle said. Both of you. Give yourselves permission to see where this goes. I'm going into surgery next week. If it goes well, I'll need months of recovery. By then, maybe you'll have figured out if this crazy switch was the worst mistake of our lives or the best thing that ever happened to us. I looked at Natalie. She was staring at her sister with a mixture of love, gratitude, and absolute terror. Nat. I said softly. It was the first time I'd called her by that nickname. She turned to me, and in her eyes, I saw the same confusion I felt. But I also saw hope. I don't know how to do this, she whispered. Neither do I admitted. But maybe that's okay. Maybe we just take it one day at a time. A small smile tugged at her lips. One day at a time, she repeated. Isabelle let out a long breath, looking more peaceful than she had since we entered the room. Good. That's settled then. Now both of you get out of here. I need my rest, and you have a wedding night to figure out. Isabelle. Natalie gasped, her face turning bright red. What? You're married now. Might as well make the most of it, Isabelle said with a weak laugh. Despite everything, I found myself smiling. As we left the hospital and walked back to the car, Natalie and I didn't speak. The weight of what had just happened hung between us. We were married. Actually, legally married. And not because of tradition or contracts or family obligations. But because her sister had seen something between us that we'd been too blind to see ourselves. "So," Natalie said as I started the car. "What now?" I thought about it for a moment, then said, "Now. Now we go get some late-night pancakes. I'm starving, and we have a lot to talk about." She laughed, and it was the most beautiful sound I'd heard all day. Pancakes. On our wedding night. How romantic. "Hey, I never claimed to be romantic," I said. "You married the wrong twin for that." "Maybe," she said, reaching over to take my hand. "Or maybe I married exactly the right person." As I drove through the empty streets, her hand warm in mine, I realized that sometimes the best things in life are the ones you never planned for. Sometimes you have to marry the wrong twin to find the right love. And sometimes, just sometimes, a lie can lead you to the truth,